Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week, we strive to create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
And our purpose is to hold and inspire better spaces by more... Oh, man.
Let's read it again.
No, and our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, share, comment, and rate this episode.
And ring that bell. Ring, ring, ring.
Ring
ding,
that
ding,
bell.
ding, ding, ding. And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
You know that just makes you creepy.
The last part?
Yeah, no, that because I saw somebody at a meeting. They were supposed to do the reading. They were just doing the reading by staring at the group. I'm all, so you memorized it.
Oh, you mean when someone memorizes it?
So you memorized it.
That is the weirdest flex. Yeah. That is the weirdest flex when people do that in meetings.
And it's not a flex because it's like, I knew somebody who could read verbatim or who could quote the book back and forth or whatever, but didn't understand it. I'm all, good job.
And so we have this special guest with us today.
Do we do?
I thought special.
What's your name? How are you, Jamie?
Hi, I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm Jamie.
Thanks for coming on.
Addict and an alcoholic.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
So how's everyone doing?
So I'm good. Yesterday I celebrated 15 years of continuous
15 fucking years.
Congratulations.
15 years. Congratulations on 15 years. That's amazing, Louis.
It's wild. Every time I come up on an anniversary, I'm always reminded about making the decision to go into recovery was the easiest decision. I don't know if I got that right because it took forever because I don't know what I was thinking was on the other side. But once I made the decision, I'm all, oh my God, I wish I had done this sooner.
What, turned 15?
No, gotten sober.
Oh.
I don't know if you know how time works, Anthony.
I'm not sure you know how conversations work.
And there it was. So how are you doing, Anthony?
I am doing good. It's so good to see both of you and Stephen, who's behind the camera. I've just been really tired. I've just kind of trudging along. But yeah, overall things are pretty good.
Right on.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
And how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. It's a beautiful, warm day outside. The rain has gone. That has been painful the last few weeks, all that rain. I didn't want to leave my bed.
Yeah.
It's weird. That's
weird. I certainly felt like this morning I was like, I'm going to call in.
It's interesting because, you have all these folks saying, we need this, but the way it can adversely affect someone's mood.
Oh.
Like literally the whole city goes to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. And then daylight savings time. Oh, God. Seriously? What more can you give us?
We sound like a couple of old biddies like, daylight savings time, and I'm just so tired.
And no kids on my
lawn. Well, that's great, Jamie. Thanks for coming on. And so for folks listening in, today's topic is ketamine treatment in recovery. So we'll basically be talking for those who are not familiar with ketamine treatment. It was approved a few years ago for the treatment of a number of disorders, anxiety, PTSD being one of the chief pathologies that it's been used to treat, and it's done very successful. It's been very successful, and people have gone through the treatment successfully. And so we have Jamie on today, who is going to be sharing a little bit about his experience with ketamine treatment. And shall we jump in?
Of course, let's
jump in.
Dive right in.
So first, I think it would probably be helpful if you explain to us what motivated you to seek ketamine treatment.
Okay. So again, I'm Jamie. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. Oh my God, silly.
I have a long history of trauma, generational trauma, long history of depression, anxiety, using substances on top of that did not help. I can say that for sure, right? And being on long-term antidepressants for a long time and not achieving the effect of still feeling depressed, still feeling anxious, not being able to make any growth in therapy. I felt stagnant. I had a therapist who recommended this, but let's also say like I did every other fucking treatment out there that I felt comfortable with. I did like EMDR therapy. I did like this therapist made me stare at like a laser point, like I was a cat, like followed it around the room.
Didn't you go to a silent retreat? I love that story.
I can share about that.
Yeah, what happened on your silent retreat?
Way to bring up my ways I try to get sober. So I went on this Vipassana workshop, which is 10 days of silent meditation. I like researched it. Meanwhile, I was on substances. I was not sober at this time. I thought maybe if I, went there, I would have a spiritual awakening. Could put down the pipe, the pill, or the bottle. And so I flew over to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I showed up at this retreat. And there's all these like really beautiful yogis, and I'm like, cracked out, coming down, trying to like find it. They give you a cement block to sleep on. I felt like it was like, I don't know, concentration camp. It was really, really, really bad. And, one meal a day. And, you got chores, you need to get up and like, mop the bathroom, be silent. And on day 3, they asked me to politely leave. I say I quit, but they asked me to leave.
Why?
I think I was a disturbance. Well, what happened was I was in the bathroom. I was, you're still coming down. I was afraid I was going to lose my voice completely. I was like, I'm never going to be able to talk again. And I started like screaming in the bathroom as I'm like throwing water into like the latrine hole that you have to go to the bathroom in, and then like the providers who are running the retreat, brought me into the office and said, hey, we got you a bus ticket back from the mountains down to Chiang Mai to take a flight. The fuck out of
here. I was going to kick on that story.
So I want to circle back to what you were saying. So
cool.
It sounded like what you were saying is that you had basically exhausted your options. You were like, you did all of these different things. Can you say more about at what point did you feel like therapy just wasn't working for you?
Well, so at that point I wasn't, taking the suggestions of my therapist of like not drinking and drugging. So, this journey being sober with my, mental health issues, I then, dove deep back down into, doing EMDR, meditation with my therapist, all this different type of therapies, like putting my hands into a sandbox and trying to like process through all my trauma, and it was still not working. So my therapist suggested, the possibility of me adding ketamine into my process of dealing with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. But I also like to say, like, I was having issues with SSRIs and medications. I was, going through medications, not feeling the effects, and they take a long time to start. You have to start off slowly or you get nauseous, and I was having all these symptoms. Weight gain was one, not sleeping was another. The other one was like erectile stuff. Like I could get on the Ferris wheel, but I couldn't get off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was like a sweaty mess, and like, this is not going to work as an active gay man being like, sexually active. This is another like.
I love the way that you put that. That was very kind of graceful and elegant. I get on
that you could get on the Ferris wheel, but you couldn't get off.
Well, get off.
We may have viewers. I don't know. But, I'm not trying to be PC.
Yeah.
So like, I had all these issues that I was taking notes with. I really looked at this, and for me, the insanity of this whole thing is like, I'm going to bring the steps into this, where I thought my process of doing this treatment was like, the insanity was doing the same thing every single day and not having the same results of being, sick and tired of being depressed, anxious, sober, 100% sober, having a spiritual connection with a higher power, but still feeling like I wanted to kill myself. No withdrawal to like do anything. So listening to my therapist about adding these other resources was done with intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you're also highlighting what a lot of people go through when they're dealing with, it sounded like you were talking about like treatment resistant depression,
yes.
right? Then you're also dealing with the side effects of medications, which can make depression worse. So like weight gain can make depression worse.
For sure.
The sexual side effects can make depression worse.
For sure.
And then there's also sometimes, I know, at least in my own experience, and I know this happens sometimes when people are working with different sponsors, where it can feel like you're stagnant in therapy, where like you've done all the processing you can possibly do, and then you feel stuck.
Yeah,
for sure.
Is it possible that I want to use your words, circle back so we can ask Jamie those questions?
Oh, I know.
Oh my God. Yeah. Go ahead, Louis.
Okay. So, well, no, I there's only one question I asked. So why don't you ask the first one?
Well, the first question is, sorry. So as you know, we ask everyone these questions.
Those 3 questions.
The first one.
We just jumped right.
Yeah, we did, because I'm so excited about ketamine.
Exactly. No, and it's good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We have a good flow going on.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this is very interesting topic to me, for me, because I've done ketamine treatment, but we can come back to that in a second. So, first question is, where are you from?
So if you couldn't tell by my accent sometimes, I'm from the East Coast. I grew up in Massachusetts.
Soba.
I got
soba.
Well, I didn't get soba there. I got soba here. Kidding. No. So grew up in Massachusetts. I'm the product of 2 lesbians. I have this bonsai attic tree family, like,
The bonsai trees?
Yeah, well, they're like, like a normal tree. Like, my tree's pretty fucked up. You know
what
I mean?
I thought you meant your family like were experts in bonsai trees. And I was like, oh my God, Jamie, that's so interesting.
No. No.
Okay.
Just so you know.
So lesbian moms.
Lesbian moms, long line of addicts, riddled with this disease, lots of generational trauma that we talked about. Lost 2 siblings to this disease. I lost my biological mom to this disease. Yeah. So a lot of trauma, a lot of chaos. In East Coast, we're stoic. You don't cry. You don't show your emotions. You get up, you walk, 5 miles barefoot in the snow to get to school.
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania.
You go uphill both ways.
Yeah. Both ways. Yeah.
Uphill both ways.
So what, knowing that, what brought you to this recovery?
This recovery, it was a long, painful journey. Like, I know the people talk about it being like sometimes fun, then fun with problems, and then just problems. Mine was agonizing from the beginning, although I lied to myself and said it was fun, right? Like, oh, this is amazing, and I was just like so sick and tired. And we talked about earlier about me going on this retreat. I tried every single fucking way to get sober. I also went and did ayahuasca. I went down to Costa Rica before and was like, yeah, this is going to work. I'm going to come back, be sober. And, I was high, but when I landed, back here at SFO, like I had my dealer at the airport, I was ready to go, and, so I was really sick and tired.
That's very good planning. Sorry.
I know.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing too.
That's very good planning.
Well, there's Wi-Fi in the sky. Thank you, United Airlines, for that. Maybe I'll get a free flight out of this one. Kidding. No,
plug.
It was my journey of being sick and tired, hanging out with people. I was the low life. Like I had no people that were below me. I was that. I was lonely.
Isn't that ironic? It's this whole idea of lower companions. If I call somebody a lower companion, it's probably because I am. It's like I'm
for sure.
Go ahead.
I hate that. Like we were using tools and skills that we both didn't know. Anywho, so I came in here in 2016. Relapse is part of my story.
Mine too, yeah.
Yeah, I have a sobriety date coming up, which I'm super proud of. I crawled in here the first time. I was spiritually broken. I wanted to try something different, and I knew that this was the solution. I heard it. I could see all you people hanging out on the stairs, and Louis used to sit out there and laugh, and I was like, I want what he has, but I'm terrified to walk the Mount Everest of stairs to get it.
Fact checker.
Oh my God.
MGM.
Wow.
Hi, MGM, and I don't know who DW is, but thank you, DW.
So, that was my journey, and I stayed. This time around, I'm stayed. It's been painful coming back, April 28th of, 22, so I'm coming up on 2 years again.
Hey.
Yeah, hey, one day at a time, if I'm willing. And so that's what brought me in.
Okay, so then the last question that we ask people is, what's your relationship with your higher power?
Grounded. So my higher power has changed since I got here. I love how like we can make it our own. It could be the group of drunks, group of druggies. And today mine is grace over drama. And I did not tagline that. That's not mine. I heard it on a retreat and some guy said it, and that makes total sense to me, right? I want to live my life with grace, free from fear, free from depression, free from anxiety, And I turn that all over to my God, and my God, grace, wants that in my life. But if I'm living in like my character defects of like being shady, or any of my character defects, that's the drama in my life, and I try to bring 6 and 7 to it and connect it with my higher power all the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate your mentioning of the steps. I brought out our drinks because they look like failed urinalysis. Like this looks like a foggy urine, and then that.
Well, I was
looks
just
like
looking at
blood
the
in urine.
contrast and the colors in my can.
Mine looks like I'm on my cycle.
So let's go back. So I want to go back. So I wanted to share just a little bit about what I was relating to with respect to being stuck in therapy. So it was at the point, like I shared with you earlier that my therapist had suggested I do ketamine therapy because I had gotten to a point where I said I'm stuck. We've talked about everything. I've been in therapy for over 6 years now. I've been in therapy since I was a kid, and I just got to this point where like there was no place for me to go, and she had suggested it, but because of my fears of the way people might talk about it in the recovery spaces, and Louis was really helpful with this, I didn't want to do it. And then 6 months later, my therapist brought it up again. Mm-hmm. And so I finally went and I did ketamine treatment. And for me, it was very difficult. And we can talk more about that later. But I just wanted to relate that for a lot of people who seek treatment, that's the story. The story is like, we literally have tried everything.
For sure.
And it was just time for something new.
Well, I know we chatted before we got on air about the fear around it. I too had the same fear. I was terrified that what others in the fellowship would think about me if I disclosed that I use this substance with a medical provider, what people would thought. And I talked about it with my therapist. I have a MSW therapist. I have a psychiatrist who prescribes, and then I had this other provider who where I got my ketamine treatments, monitored me throughout the whole process. So I did a lot of talking about it with my therapist, and it came to the conclusion that, like we talked about this, other people's opinions is none of my business.
That's right. Yeah.
And you know what? When people assume, they make an ass out of you and me. So
right.
I took that intention into my treatments.
It goes back to staying in our own hula hoop, because if I'm so concerned about what's going on over there, then it's usually because I'm not wanting to face something that I'm dealing with here.
Yeah.
It's like, and that happens everywhere, church, all other places.
For sure.
You're doing this, you know what, whatever. The other thing is like, it really, like it early on, and I talked about this, it's like with my sponsor, like early recovery, I was so overzealous about, like, after I got it, I was like, yeah, I got it. And I didn't understand that it looked different for other people. And sometimes people didn't hold on to it. And so, yeah.
And I also thought, like, I love my sponsors because I have a few, and they're not paid.
That's right.
They don't take my insurance or my copays. And nor did I want to bring this. I knew, because I had program in me before, right?
Mm-hmm.
That my trauma.
Was that in Thailand?
Oh, no.
You had program in you before?
I wish. No, but you know what I mean? Like, where was I going with this? You interrupted me.
I know.
How dare you? I was on a good...
So you were talking about, I think what you were going to talk about was that that the program is free.
Yeah, the program is free. And, I had the wherewithal to know that, like, I needed help outside these rooms. And the only way I could get it was by medical professionals who, and this is not like their first week of doing this. They had long term of studying this,
right.
And like, because sometimes you have a sponsor who's brand new. It may not give you the advice that you need.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I knew I couldn't bring this stuff. Like, you talked about being stuck. Like, I was stuck. And we talked about, like, I felt like I was on,
and we also have a tendency to bring our personal stuff
for sure
into our conversations. And that's important in our relationships. But when it comes to something like this, my professional opinion holds more weight.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I think, what that brings up for me is boundaries are very important. And I think when it comes to 12 step, there are a bunch of things, at least for me, that I have to kind of the line in the sand for me with sponsees is like, I am just walking you through the 12 steps.
Absolutely.
That's it. If it's not in the big book and it's not in the 12 and 12, it is just my opinion, period. Right. And we have to have boundaries around that kind of stuff. And I think similarly, when we comes to like our medical care, our mental health care, et cetera, like I have to have boundaries around that kind of stuff too.
No, for sure. And that's how I practice with my sponsees as well too. Like, and I'm a provider. I would never suggest anything to my sponsees, no medical advice, nothing, because that's the boundary I set. So just very clear. Like
I don't even suggest to my sponsees to go to Al-Anon. Like we have conversations and we talk about what, and really it's like, as much as I want to tell you this, that, whatever, it is not my place to, I want you to get to the decision, kind of like what you're talking about. If you get to the decision on your own and you own it and you get some acceptance around the choices you make. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's actually in the pamphlet in the what is a sponsor's pamphlet. It says we don't take our sponsees inventories. I'm mindful of the time, and there are other questions I want to get to. So tell us more about like what it was like for you. What was the actual process like for you?
So I got my treatment at a treatment place run by an anesthesiologist. Mine was done intravenously. You're monitored for 45 minutes. And I was telling Anthony before this, like I had like this PIC crew team. I had the provider who, instills or infuses. Then I would see my psychiatrist after that within 24 hours. And then I also would be working with my MSW within that week so we could tap in. I have a lot of trauma that was like plugged. I couldn't like talk about it. I would get to a point and then there would be no like jumping off point. Like how it says and like how it works. Like I stood at the turning point. Like I was stuck at that turning point for so long and I couldn't articulate my feelings of what was going on. Was I like sad? Was I lonely? Did I feel abandoned? All this process from losing my mom or the trauma that I went through the last 2 years, like I couldn't articulate and I was frustrated. And then it was like this domino effect of like emotions and I felt like I was in mud. And once I did I think after the second treatment, I felt like I was no longer in the quicksand of mud. I could walk. And then, like we talked about Niagara Falls, by the sixth treatment, I felt like I was flowing down a river and I felt safe and I was able to articulate. I was able to correlate my feeling to an action and to an emotion that happened. Like an event. Oh, I felt like this when my mom died. That was sadness. Or, oh my gosh, I feel abandoned. I couldn't articulate what was going on in my body. And that led me to be depressed, anxious, for years, And when I was using substances, like that dumbed down that noise because I couldn't articulate. Does that make sense?
100%.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes it's like, I'm like, I'm in therapy now. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, what am I expressing? Does that finally make sense? Because I felt so fucking confused for so long.
Yeah, this is what people don't want to hear when they dive in and make their comments about what's going on. They don't want to pay attention to the reasonings behind the choices that another person might make.
For sure. And I got to say this. I was telling Anthony before this, I had a lot of fear coming on today because of other people's opinions, right? They're going to be like, oh, collecting dirty chips. But I realized like I did this so consciously with my higher power, right? Grace, like she was with me this whole time of making this decision because the insanity would be to still feel stuck and feel miserable. And I don't want to be that crazy person in the rooms,
Yeah. And, that is and what you're outlining is the difference between what it looks like for someone to just do ketamine off the street versus what it looks like to go through ketamine treatment.
Listen, I loved a good K-hole back in the day. I loved being stuck inside an aluminum can. And that was not the experience I was targeting this time. And that's what I think about when I talk about with my sponsees or even myself. What is the intention of taking this medication? Is it my intention to get fucked up and not feel, or is this my intention is because I'm stuck and I want to be able to feel?
Right. And there are the other parts that are really important about what you said, which is you were under the supervision of a doctor. Yeah. You were having what are called integration sessions where like the material that gets brought up to the surface, you're working through that material with a therapist so that you can make those connections that you were making. And in the end, you had this very complete complete therapeutic experience, right? You weren't in a room blacked out with, lights flickering around you.
There was no isolation.
Yeah.
I felt so complete and whole with other people around. And I don't know where I had a thought and just like, phew.
Well, you were talking earlier about, and a nice segue to this, the next part of what I was curious about was you were talking about the fears that you had about coming on and people having opinions about you having been on ketamine treatment.
Yeah.
Having done ketamine treatment.
Just people, I was back east in meetings back east, and people talk about like if you're on antidepressants, you're not sober, and you hear all the noise and all these old timers saying that, and I was scared, like that they're gonna, question my sobriety, question that I'm not sober, and yeah, I just there again. I have to keep saying it to myself loud. I need to get maybe a tattoo. Their opinion doesn't matter. Right?
It doesn't.
And that my connection with my higher power and why I was doing this was not to like get loaded.
Yeah, exactly.
Was to process through all this shit.
Yeah, and go ahead, Louis.
No, I was just going to comment. It sounds like a lot of dry people that were commenting.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
do you have a beep? No, I'm kidding.
I think what comes up for me too is as I'm listening to you is that, and in my experience with ketamine treatment was not as therapeutic, right? I was explaining to you off air that it was actually kind of a little traumatic for me. It wasn't very easy. It was very difficult. I felt like once, I was I was undergoing the treatment, the floodgates had opened up to like every unresolved trauma I had ever had.
Did you feel not held in that moment?
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. And cool. I think a lot of it had to do with like, because there are treatments out there where you could do it at home.
Yeah.
And you have like a partner that you have that like guides you through it and stuff. And like, I didn't have that person. There was a day between when I was doing the dosing and then the day when I would have integration. So I would do the integration sessions the following day, which by then, it's very vulnerable. You're told not to expose yourself to problematic situations, people, places, and things right after treatment because you're so vulnerable. We have a comment. Rafa says, what specific moment during your ketamine therapy sessions had a profound impact on recovery journey?
Oh. Cool. So, I think if we're going back to like fear inventory, the sense of abandonment that I wasn't complete, right? Or that I wasn't loved, or that I wasn't enough, like all came transcending through this one therapy session, one ketamine treatment. Like that was all. The connection afterward was, well, I am enough. I am loved. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. And that this poor little boy that was abandoned is no longer abandoned.
Right.
I got connection to just all like the fear inventory and seeing the other solution on the other side.
I love that. And Rafa, that's a wonderful question. And I'm wondering too, what are other ways since the treatment that your recovery has been complemented by like your experiences?
I think I'm more grounded this time. I came in like 8 years ago and, it came together, but I feel more confident in connection.
He sent you hearts.
Oh, I love you, boo. I feel more connected to my higher power and I feel more grounded and I feel like more spiritually fit, right? Maybe I was dry or, also I was saving my face rather than my ass. And coming back this time, I've unapologetically shared in the meetings of what was going on. And I think that's the help because of the ketamine treatment, because I'm like, I'm here to save my life.
That's right. Yeah.
And like it opened the floodgates to like come to the rooms and share what was going on in my life. And that it was like an inhibition of.
Who's the hottie for Toddy you have on today?
Hi, Todd.
What's it say?
Who's the hottie for Toddy?
Oh,
Todd,
thank you.
Bless your heart.
Who's Todd?
I'll introduce you after.
Okay, sorry. Oh, wait, it was the person who just. Sorry, Todd. Hi, Todd. Go ahead.
So yeah, like the inhibition was like released.
Yeah.
I felt uninhibited to tell my truth, speak my truth.
Yeah.
And I felt so grounded, And I also want to say like I was on high dose medication before.
Sure.
Yeah. And doing these 6 treatments, I've halved my medication.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean? I was on really large doses of, medication, and it's helped. And, going back to that Ferris wheel, no, I can get off.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad. So we have another comment come in.
Brandon says,
Have you checked?
Go ahead.
No.
Have you checked out the PIR Psychedelics and Recovery 12-step based meetings? I went to one last year and I heard some powerful shares from folks that had similar experiences such as yours.
Brandon always knows of the coolest shit.
I know. And
I've never heard of
really,
that. That sounds so cool. Always knows of the coolest shit. Listens to the coolest music, goes to the coolest meetings.
I never knew one of these meetings even existed.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to ask you about it after this.
I feel like if I went there, like I know you were talking about another meeting you went to, and I feel like going there, maybe we can hear about the fears that we talked about, talking about this is not an outside issue for us, right?
Yeah.
And being able to have a place to talk about it.
Just one time last year was really cool.
Did the ketamine treatment last year, I guess?
Adam.
I'm assuming.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
You know what? Something that I want to talk about, so I really feel like the act right now of talking about this as you have is very esteemable in the sense that I really believe that it's important for us to get acceptance. I said this before around decisions that we have to make for our well-being, and get being courageous and going through the fears of what other people were going to think. Because I shouldn't worry about what other people think, but that's in a perfect world it doesn't happen.
So talking about that, I'm definitely a people pleaser. I'm definitely a codependent. Doing this treatment, I realized that, I talked about being enough. I was able to work on my codependency, trauma bonding skills through therapy after doing these sessions.
I love that. So with the, so we're starting to land the plane, but before we do, I really wanted to hear about what are some lessons or things that you've learned after going through treatment? So you've gestured towards some of them, but I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you want to share.
I shouldn't have waited so long, but I wasn't ready. So I have to be forgive myself for not being ready. It happens when it happens. And I'm grateful for that. There's these new lines of drugs that Brandon was talking about, other psychedelics like psilocybin, and that we have these tools to add to our toolbox, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
I agree with you. I feel, in listening to you, I think what I'm taking away from this is that I could have really benefited from something that was more structured. I think, and maybe you can share a little bit about this, but there are a bunch of different businesses out there that offer this type of treatment, and some of them are better than others. And I think, in my opinion, I think the businesses or organizations or clinics that are offering comprehensive treatment, from start to finish with integration, those to me feel like the more reputable.
For sure. So I did my due diligence, right, like a project tweaker. I looked up them all, and I asked questions, because I know we talked about this before. I really wanted to be authentic in my pursuit of this, that it was spiritually fit, right? Because I know how to manipulate anybody for a drug, So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that, I have substance abuse issues, that I was doing this with the intention to be able to be no longer stuck. So I had to talk with the people there. And there's a lot of people that you don't have to say a lot and you can get it, right? There's people pushing this really, really quickly. And I went to two of those clinics, and I won't say their names, and I felt that, and I said, nope. And then this one clinic that my psychiatrist recommended, we talked about the care plan. He led the care plan. He talked to my psychiatrist. He then talked to my, my therapist. And I felt like I had a pit crew.
It felt responsible.
Yeah.
You felt held. Yeah. One of the red flags, and I won't say maybe I will say their name, but there was the business or clinic that I went through. It was clear to me when it was contraindicated, that is, when the treatment was making things worse for me, when I got locked into a subscription and they were charging me anyway. Oh, yeah. At that point, I thought it was the organization was called Mind Bloom, and I was having crazy anxiety and I couldn't take that. Like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I contacted them and I said, listen, like, my psychiatrist is telling me this is a bad idea. And they were like, okay, fine, but you still have to pay off the rest of this thing. But the thing is if you looked at if you did the math, it was clear that like what they were privileging or what they were prioritizing was the profit.
For sure.
Yeah,
And there's individuals out there that's
I mean, there are places like that in San Francisco for sure, where like the second ketamine started being used in this way, a lot of people just started to kind of
for sure
jump on that. But there are, you know, like I said, there are clinics and there are people, businesses that are, I don't want to say businesses, but there are clinics and health providers out there that are reputable.
But you know, maybe a benefit is saying business, because I think that for someone moving forward with this, what I've heard today, what I can take away from this is the decision to do it was in conversation with others who had, you know, I believe my best interest.
That's
sure.
right.
And I need to continue that discussion and continue to advocate for myself, because there are business out there disguised as clinics or whatever that may not have my best interest.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like you said, you did your due diligence.
Yeah.
And so you were able to have a good experience, but you want to make sure that folks moving forward, like, are mindful so that they don't find themselves, you know, in a situation that causes more harm than good.
For sure. I mean, I exhausted every single resource out there. I even did magnetic therapy.
Me too. Yeah.
I felt like I was like in a tin can getting like my
brain zapped.
Zapped. I'm like, what is this? This is more torture than that. I did everything. And I was thoughtful with my providers. Like, this was like the last bus stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like, this is what we're going to do. And then we had the collaboration with everyone. I felt seen, I felt heard, and I felt like they were on the boat with me. You know what I'm saying?
Adam just included a link to psychedelicsandrecovery.org.
Thanks.
Adam. Thank you, Adam.
Yes.
Oh, Adam was talking about having been to that meeting before.
Yes. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. I think, you know, I think the maybe unspoken thing here has been that I think for a lot of us, especially in recovery, that struggle with mental health issues, a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, we're constantly looking for solutions. Like when I was drinking and using, that was what I was trying to do essentially, is like I was in a lot of pain and I was just trying to cope by drinking and using, right? And when I found 12-step, you know, like I feel very fortunate in that at some point, because relapse is also part of my story, right? And shit just clicks when it clicks. And so I feel very grateful that, you know, I'm in recovery and I'm sober and I'm doing step work and I have this program, right? And that doesn't mean that I don't take my psych meds. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to therapy. Like for me, for this person, this alcoholic, like it really does take having a pit crew, right? Like it really does take, in this case, you know, when you were talking about it was more concentrated, but for me, it takes having like a sponsor and a therapist and a psychiatrist, and it takes having like people in the fellowship, and it takes me doing 12 steps. Like, and that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying too, is that it was just another tool that you were using, right? It wasn't like go ahead.
Finish. I was going to interrupt you. I don't know.
No, go ahead, interrupt.
So yeah, it was an added tool, right? It just made my toolbox larger to accept maybe the work of like really doing a thorough 4-step that I didn't want to bring shit to my sponsor about, right? Big trauma that my sponsor could only get me so far, that I knew needed a therapist to really like talk about it weeks and weeks. Like, you know, sometimes you do a 4-step and you do a 5th step and you talk about, you read the one line and it's done with a sponsor, but you need like weeks and weeks of like therapy to, like, you know, that's what I also beating myself up. I'm like, talked about it with my sponsor, but I'm still stuck with this feeling. And then the feeling still continued for 4 or 5, 6 sessions with my therapist. And now we were able to process, like, I felt abandoned, right? Or I felt scared. This is the feeling I'm having. And I was like, oh, I felt scared. This is what scared feels like. And I was able to process it, even maybe cry, you know? Yeah. I come from, like I told you, I'm East Coast. We don't cry.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I feel like I'm from the East Coast. I don't cry.
You know, at my sister's funeral, my mom, like, my grandmother gave me a Benadryl, like, to calm me down, right? Like, we put substances in our body so we do not know how to feel. You know?
I feel that. Yeah. Yeah. I think it might be time to land the plane.
Wow.
You
That
know
was
what?
really quick.
Oh, yeah.
We had, you know what I will say? Like
Jeffrey
I was thinking,
says,
Jeffrey says,
right here. Aww, Jeffrey.
yeah, we love you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey's my sponsee. I totally spilled your tea. He's in recovery.
Not you throwing up someone's anonymity.
Whatever. That's all good.
I do what I want.
I do what I
poop in
want.
the streets.
No. We have 5 minutes. Take that down. I was just going to make a comment. Okay, so you know how folks talk about this one's rushing me. You know how some folks talk about this being the last house on the block.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the last house on the block, but I really feel like sometimes it's the work that we do with recovery in the 12 steps specifically that gets us ready to go out and say, hey, maybe I need to reach out because. Like, I don't know about you all, but before I got sober, I didn't know that this is what I needed, sure. And then I didn't know how. And even if it was like ingrained or whatever, if I knew other people experienced it, I didn't necessarily know it was for me until I knew it was for me. And so I feel like, and what I'm learning more and more every day is that it may be that I need a bunch of things.
Well, I believe there's like more than 12 steps. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like there's like taxes and teeth. I hear that's like the 14th step. So maybe like, therapy is the 15th step. Like, like I was telling, was it you or you before?
Stupid taxes and teeth.
Girl. So, I think I was telling Louis before that, like my first sponsor back in 16, after our first few meetings, he like walked me up Market Street to like the Gay Connection Therapy Center. And he's like,
Queer Space.
Queer Space.
Queer
He's like,
yeah.
This is part of your journey. Like you'll get sober, but there's lots of outside issues and this is where you need to go. Right.
Yeah.
And that started my journey. I've had a therapist there who transitioned to her own private practice, who I still see, who's, been a part of this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Therapy has been immensely beneficial for me.
Now you can put the banner up. I'm sorry. That was crazy.
Well, first, thank you, Jamie. Thank you for coming on. That was incredible. Yeah.
Thank you for this is what we talk about, this idea of a brave space.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a brave space simply because, like, there are no guarantees. Nothing's protecting you, but speaking your truth is going to absolutely inspire someone else to. Because, like I always say, like when I share at a meeting and I close it out, it's like this is for the still suffering alcoholic and addict who may be suffering in silence.
Yeah, I hope that,
and we don't need that.
I hope if someone is stuck, who could understand like what I emphasize and can relate to feeling stuck with mental health, that there is options out there and that you can still remain sober. So
yeah, and I also wanted to say thank you and also praise and highlight that one of the things that I really appreciate about you is like the honesty that you bring to your recovery.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's been immensely beneficial for me as someone on the outside looking at like you processing and going through things. That to me is very encouraging, because a lot of the times there's like fear that I have around things about like processing out loud or whatever. And one of the things that I love is that you are very unapologetically committed to your recovery.
Absolutely.
I want to be here, you know what I mean? Because this disease definitely wants us dead, and like.
These are the people that I pay attention to. I mean, it's like, obviously, like I'm inspired by those people who stay, but I want to hear about like, what was the struggle? What did you have to go through to get back here and to stay? My heroes are people who fall down and get right back up.
Oh, I love you. Love the both of you.
All right. Well, we love you.
Yes, and the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we go live on our Castro Country Club, Facebook, and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
So I feel like the student has surpassed the teacher.
What We're still recording, Jamie. By the way,
Brandon,
Are
you
we
know how
after dark?
you know how Brandon when he wanted us to shut up, he would pop that thing up. This one here is like before at like 45. He said,
I think it's because of me. It was me. I was the one who was like, "Oh, we're landing the plane."
I feel as though we're landing the plane, but yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
It's too early, huh?
Yeah, I know.
There,
exactly.
you got a sound effect.
Yeah, because I'm always going to stop you and say, "Oh no, take that damn banner down."
Jamie, what was that like for you?
It felt good, to share my truth and like acknowledge, like I could see you nodding to like, the correlation to like what I process. And then we talked about it before about the dam or the river or being stuck in mud, like having the articulation to have someone be aware of the shared experience,
How do you okay, so say, and this is for both of you, say like after hearing this, after listening to the podcast, someone comes to you and wants to talk about it. How do you guide them through this, or what are you going to say?
I can give them resources of my experience. I'm not going to make suggestions. I'm saying, hey, you should talk to your therapist, your psychiatrist, and here's the avenue of, I may not even give what clinic I went to because I don't want to have them come back and be like, girl, you caused all these problems in my life.
What about you, Anthony?
I think I would be honest about my experience, which was that the route that I went was actually very hard, and it was very like part of what I'm thinking is I feel very inspired by like what you shared, Jamie, because the treatment, the way that I went about my treatment, or like the people that I went with, I don't advise it. I think it's very lonely and isolating. And like I've heard from a lot of people who do this type of work in ketamine treatment work that was like the worst way to go about it.
For sure.
So I feel like I would share that. And I think, I would encourage them to look for like things that are more integrated, like Jamie was sharing.
And I totally forgot to mention, like I had a neck injury and I was on like high dose pain medication for this. And working through the ketamine treatment, I realized that all my stress I was carrying in my neck where I was injured and in my jaw, and doing these treatments, I was able to like relax. I've weaned off all those medications. I've started doing yoga again. Like everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do they? Okay, so I understand these prescription meetings or like the psychedelics and recovery meetings. But now I'm thinking about like for an individual who doesn't have access.
So you're
what do they do? Because it's like you're listening and it's like it's like, oh, I don't have the insurance, I don't have these things. It's like, what do they do?
Louis, yes, 100% yes. So what's crazy is that if you try to get it through your insurance, I know this is true for Kaiser, for example, you would have to go through you would have to jump through so many hoops before it would even be available to you. And at that point where you're even considered, your case would have to be approved by a panel of people, right? So this is if you're trying to go through your insurance. But if you have money, you can find a clinic that's going to take your money and is going to allow you to go through it. So,
be happy to take
so it does get there. In some ways, there is an issue of inequity and an inequality. The one thing I will say is that if you do your homework, if you shop around, you could find places that have like sliding scale treatment. Those are few and far between, and they're hard to find, but they do exist.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I paid primarily out of pocket, and then also like FSA or HSA account, through my employer. But then I was in the process. I appealed. I brought my all my papers to my insurance company, and they gave me a fraction back after appealing. But I sent everything in with doctor's notes, reasoning of why, and they gave me back a fraction.
That's the benefit. Like if you are able to get what you were talking about, the FSA or whatever through your job to put money into that.
I mean, I recognize my privilege. Yeah, how grateful are the resources.
Well, I'll tell you this much because you say this all the time. I really think that there is absolutely nothing with having privilege. It's that we acknowledge that we have privilege. When we think that we did all of these things without that privilege, that's when the issue shows up.
For sure.
So it's like, so I appreciate you saying that, but I want you to know that it's about your willingness to acknowledge it, that because we don't have any choice. It's like, it is what it is, you know?
You know, like when I was sitting in my treatment sessions, I would think about like, what if other individuals who are like on the streets who can maybe benefit for this, or who, you know, are just getting back on their feet, you know, living in an SRO, or, you know, how can they get this treatment?
And it's not right. And it's not, sorry to talk over you, I think, but it's not just unique to say ketamine treatment. It's the same thing with therapy.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's like therapy is very expensive. It's hard to get it through your insurance. If you do get it through your insurance, it's hard to get like quality. Like, so there's a lot of stuff like that. It was the same thing with PrEP. When PrEP was first being rolled out, there was an issue about like who has access to PrEP, right? So when we're talking about like access and privilege, it's a much bigger, it's a big
relate
problem.
that on a very basic level.
Oh
too.
yeah, I mean,
you know how some people come into recovery early on and they think, well, I don't have time to do this because I've got to find a job, I got to do this and this and whatever.
Oh yeah, 100%. Or you have people who come in who like they come into recovery and they have all this trauma, they've never had access to a therapist or a counselor. And then, you know, you took the booze and the alcohol away and now they have all this trauma and then they're relapsing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, of course they're relapsing, you know, like
no tools.
They have no tools. Right. And 12-step sometimes 12-step isn't enough. You know, 12-step can stop the bleeding, but sometimes there is a need for outside help.
Having it cauterized.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. I wrote this down. I don't normally write stuff down, but I wanted to be like
Anthony.
I wanted to be like Anthony when I grow up. No, you guys were talking about the option to do ketamine treatment at home, and of course me with my humor. I'm I tried it at home and it didn't work. Don't you have what?
Don't you have that button? Well,
Thank
you know what's crazy is that, for example, like to talk about like access. So you mentioned Ozempic but off air, right? You did make a shady comment, but I want to bring it to a teachable place, which is that Ozempic, for example, if you wanted to have, my friend is going through this right now. If you wanted access to Ozempic and you were going through an insurance provider, you'll have to go through their protocol. Yeah. So there are a bunch of different steps that you have to take before Ozempic, which is an injectable, can even be available to you. However, if you have the money, you can go directly to these other organizations.
If you have the money, they'll probably come to your house.
Yeah. They'll probably, they'll throw in like a free procedure with it.
Give you Botox with it.
Yeah.
my Ozempic before I got sober was crystal meth, and I injected it.
Trigger warning. So
access is huge, and you know. That it saddens me when getting this political that, like, you know, mental health is not really addressed, and there's not that much resources for people who are underprivileged. Like, I pay $225 for an hour session with my therapist, and I go out, and sometimes I was going twice a week, you know, and he's really, really great, but like, you know, there's not enough providers out there with this mental health crisis that's happening, not just in San Francisco, but across the nation.
Yeah.
Good providers. Because there's a lot of providers that will say yes and write you that prescription to Ozempic or whatever, and not really like look at the patient.
Right. And that's a topic for another time.
Oh my gosh, bring me back.
Yeah. No, that's a topic. No, I mean, we're going to be talking about like inequity in the next couple of months after we're done with this this season. But
you know, I feel like we need to. I mean, in having conversations like this, you know, all the disparities and all that good stuff. The fact that you still have the stigma within the recovery rooms themselves, like it needs to be normalized that, you know, we are going to love people and allow them to kind of take the journey that they need to take to get to where we all want to get to, health, you know, health and happiness and being happy, joyous, and free. And if I'm caught up in being worried about how you got there,
I wish more people would mind their own business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what?
Like, or if you have an opinion,
tighten your hula hoop so it won't touch mine.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that a lot of people realize how much harm they can cause by like spreading their like toxic opinions when they're unsolicited, you know what I mean? Especially in like recovery spaces.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking, I'm not going to share this story, but I'm just thinking about how some people throw around their suffering. You know what I mean? And by that, I mean, people, I have like a booger stuck in my nose and I thought I got it on the mic, but you have some people who will like,
wow.
Where you have, for example, I have these two friends who are known for having explosive reactions to things. Right. And anytime that's happened in any one of these friendships, whenever they've been explosive, I've just kind of taken it and applied the principles, sick and suffering, pity, patience, and tolerance. But I've walked away from those situations feeling to myself, like, why did I just endure that? You know what I mean? Like there is a difference, I think, between, showing someone pity, patience, and tolerance, and then also like subjecting myself to abuse,
But that's when you learn to get like healthy boundaries. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think on that note, we might just end.
Yeah.
Sounds good.